Marcus Johnson adjusted his tie as he walked down the boarding tunnel of the luxury space liner Stellar Dawn. His sister Diana walked beside him, both of them tired but satisfied after 3 days at the Colonial Business Conference on Luna Station. The conference had gone well. Their company's new proposals for colonial infrastructure had impressed everyone. "I still can't believe we're flying first class," Diana said, checking her boarding pass again. "The company really went all out this time," Marcus smiled. "We earned it. That presentation on mining efficiency was brilliant." The Stellar Dawn was one of the newest ships in the civilian fleet. Her corridors gleamed with polished metal and soft lighting. Passengers moved quietly through the halls, many of them wealthy, business people and government officials heading to Mars Colony for various meetings and conferences. The siblings found their seats in the first-class cabin. Row 3, seats A and B. The seats were large and comfortable with personal entertainment screens and plenty of legroom. Marcus stored his briefcase in the overhead compartment, while Diana settled in by the window. 6 hours to Mars, she said, looking out at the loading dock. I might actually get some sleep for once. Other passengers were still boarding. Marcus noticed the usual mix of business travelers, a few families, and what looked like some government officials in expensive suits. Everyone seemed calm and professional. 20 minutes after boarding, a flight attendant approached their row. She was a middle-aged woman with blonde hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her name tag read Karen Williams. She had a forced smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Excuse me," she said, looking directly at Marcus and Diana. "I need to speak with you both about your seating arrangement." Marcus looked up from his tablet. "Is there a problem with our seats?" "Well, there's been a small issue," Karen said, her voice taking on a practiced, businesslike tone. "We have a very important passenger who needs these particular seats for medical reasons. I'm going to need you both to move to seats in the economy section." Diana frowned. "Medical reasons? What kind of medical reasons require these specific seats?" Karen's smile became more strained. "I'm sorry, but I can't discuss another passenger's medical information. However, I can move you to very nice seats in Economy Plus. You'll be much more comfortable there." Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. He had heard this kind of tone before. The polite words that weren't really polite. The smile that wasn't really friendly. "We paid for first-class seats," he said calmly. "Our tickets are valid. If there's a medical emergency, surely the passenger can be accommodated in another way." "I'm afraid that's not possible," Karen replied, her voice becoming firmer. "These seats are specifically needed. Now, if you'll just gather your things, I can show you to your new seats." Other passengers were starting to notice the conversation. A few heads turned in their direction. Marcus could feel their eyes on him and Diana. "We're not moving," Diana said quietly but clearly. "We have valid tickets for these seats. We paid for them and we're staying here." Karen's fake smile disappeared completely. "I'm trying to be reasonable here, but I need these seats. This is a very important passenger with special needs." "And we're not important?" Marcus asked, his voice still calm but with an edge creeping in. At that moment, a well-dressed white man in an expensive suit approached their row. He was probably in his 50s, with silver hair and the confident air of someone used to getting his way. "Is there a problem here?" he asked Karen, then looked at Marcus and Diana with obvious annoyance. "These are my seats. I specifically requested row 3. Karen looked relieved. "Mr. Peterson, I was just explaining to these passengers that they need to move to economy." Peterson nodded, as if this was perfectly reasonable. "Good. I have important calls to make during the flight. I need the extra space and privacy." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. There was no medical emergency, no special needs, just a wealthy man who wanted better seats and expected to get them. "We're not moving," Marcus said again, his voice steady but firm. Peterson's face darkened. "Excuse me? Do you know who I am? I'm Charles Peterson of Peterson Industries. I practically own half the mining operations on Mars." "That's nice," Diana said coolly. "We're still not moving." Karen looked around nervously. Other passengers were definitely watching now. Some looked uncomfortable, others seemed curious about the drama unfolding. "Look," Karen said, trying to sound reasonable again. I'm going to have to call security if you don't cooperate. This doesn't have to become a big scene. Marcus reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his personal communicator. It was a military-grade device, sleek and black with security encryption codes along the side. That's fine, he said calmly. I need to make a call too. Karen paused, looking at the communicator with confusion. It wasn't a standard civilian device. The encryption codes were clearly visible, marking it as high-level military equipment. Who are you calling? She asked, suddenly uncertain. Marcus was already dialing. Someone who can clear this up quickly. The call connected almost immediately. Marcus spoke in a clear, professional voice that carried just far enough for nearby passengers to hear. Admiral Hayes? This is Marcus. Sorry to bother you, but I have a situation on civilian transport Stellar Dawn, Flight 847 to Mars Colony. We have a discrimination issue that needs immediate attention. He paused, listening to the response. Diana watched him with a small smile. She knew exactly what was happening. Yes, ma'am, Marcus continued. Both Diana and I are aboard. We're being asked to give up our paid first-class seats to accommodate a wealthy passenger. The flight attendant is threatening to call security. Another pause. Marcus nodded, even though the person on the other end couldn't see him. Understood. We'll wait for your instructions. Thank you, Admiral. He ended the call and put the communicator back in his pocket. Karen was staring at him with wide eyes. Peterson looked confused and annoyed. Admiral, Karen whispered. That's right, Marcus said calmly. Admiral Patricia Hayes, Colonial Space Defense Force. She's very interested in this situation. The color drained from Karen's face. Even Peterson looked less confident now. I think, Marcus continued, settling back in his seat, you might want to reconsider your approach to customer service. Diana opened her book and began reading as if nothing had happened. Around them, other passengers were whispering and pointing. The atmosphere in the first-class cabin had completely changed. Karen backed away from their row, her hands shaking slightly. I need to speak with the captain. That's probably a good idea, Marcus agreed politely. As Karen hurried toward the cockpit, Peterson stood frozen in the aisle, suddenly unsure of himself. The man who had been so confident just moments before now looked like he wanted to disappear. Marcus looked up at him with a calm expression. Is there anything else we can help you with, Mr. Peterson? Peterson opened his mouth, then closed it, again. Without another word, he turned and walked quickly back to his assigned seat in row 7. The siblings sat quietly, waiting for what would happen next. Diana turned a page in her book. Marcus returned to his tablet. Around them, the first-class cabin buzzed with whispered conversations about what they had just witnessed. Neither of them looked worried. They had made their call, and they knew exactly what kind of response it would bring. 10 minutes passed in tense silence. Marcus continued reading his tablet while Diana looked out the window at the loading dock. Other passengers kept glancing their way, whispering among themselves. The first-class cabin felt thick with anticipation. Captain Rodriguez appeared from the cockpit, walking quickly down the aisle with Karen trailing behind him. He was a tall man with graying hair and the steady bearing of someone who had spent decades in space. His uniform was crisp and professional, but his face showed concern. Mr. Johnson, he said, stopping at their row. I'm Captain Rodriguez. I understand there's been some confusion about seating arrangements. Marcus looked up calmly. No confusion on our part, Captain. We have valid first-class tickets. Your flight attendant asked us to move to economy to make room for another passenger. We declined. The captain glanced at Karen, who was standing nervously behind him. Ms. Williams tells me you made some kind of official call. That's correct, Marcus replied. I contacted my superior officer about a potential discrimination incident. She's reviewing the situation. Captain Rodriguez frowned. Superior officer? Are you military personnel? Before Marcus could answer, his communicator chimed with an incoming priority message. The sound was different from a normal call. Sharper, more urgent. It was the kind of tone that made experienced spacers pay attention. "Excuse me," Marcus said, checking the device. "I need to take this." He answered the call, putting it on speaker so everyone nearby could hear. A woman's voice came through clearly with the crisp authority of high military command. "Commander Johnson, this is Admiral Hayes. I've reviewed the incident report. Is the ship's captain present?" Captain Rodriguez stepped forward, his face pale. "This is Captain Rodriguez of the Stellar Dawn. Who am I speaking with?" "Admiral Patricia Hayes, Colonial Space Defense Force." "Captain, I need to speak with you about two of your passengers. Commander Marcus Johnson and Dr. Diana Johnson are under my direct authority. Any mistreatment of them is a matter of fleet security." The captain's jaw dropped. Around them, passengers were leaning forward to listen. Karen looked like she might faint. "Commander?" Captain Rodriguez whispered, staring at Marcus. Admiral Hayes continued speaking. "Captain, you have two of humanity's greatest heroes on your ship. Commander Johnson single-handedly saved the colony on Kepler 442b from alien attack 3 years ago. His tactical brilliance and personal courage saved 30,000 lives." Marcus remained calm, but Diana smiled slightly. She was used to people's reactions when they learned the truth. "Dr. Diana Johnson," the Admiral continued, "developed the quantum shield technology that currently protects 12 of our outer colonies. Her work has saved hundreds of thousands of lives and continues to be our primary defense against hostile alien forces." Peterson, who had been listening from several rows back, slowly stood up and walked closer, his face showing shock and growing shame. Captain Rodriguez looked between the siblings, his expression a mixture of awe and embarrassment. "I had no idea. Your tickets just showed civilian names. We prefer to travel quietly when possible." Diana spoke for the first time since the call began. "We don't usually need to reveal our positions." Admiral Hayes was not finished. "Captain, I'm sending you their full service records now. Commander Johnson holds the Colonial Medal of Honor, the Star of Courage, and the Distinguished Service Cross. Dr. Johnson is a recipient of the Scientific Achievement Award and the Colonial Defense Citation." The captain's communicator beeped as the files arrived. He looked at the screen, his eyes widening as he scrolled through pages of commendations, mission reports, and security clearances. "This is incredible," he breathed. "Commander, Doctor, I owe you both a profound apology." Other passengers were pulling out their own devices, quietly searching for information about the Johnson siblings. Whispers spread through the cabin as people found news articles and military reports. "The Battle of Kepler Station," someone whispered. "He's the one who held off 3 alien cruisers with just a damaged frigate." "She invented the shields that saved New Angeles Colony," another passenger added. Karen was backing away slowly, realizing the magnitude of her mistake. She had tried to force 2 of humanity's greatest defenders out of their seats to please a wealthy businessman. Admiral Hayes spoke again. "Captain Rodriguez, I trust this matter will be resolved appropriately. The Commander and Doctor have my full support, and any further discrimination will be treated as a security issue." "Absolutely, Admiral," the captain replied quickly. "There will be no further problems." "Good. Commander Johnson, Dr. Johnson, please continue your journey. You've both earned whatever small comforts civilian life can offer." Marcus ended the call and put his communicator away. The first-class cabin was completely quiet now. Everyone was staring at the siblings with new understanding. Peterson stepped forward, his earlier arrogance completely gone. "Commander Johnson, Dr. Johnson, I owe you both an apology. My behavior was inexcusable. I had no right to demand your seats." Marcus looked at him steadily. "We're all human, Mr. Peterson. We all make mistakes. The question is what we do after we realize we've made them." Peterson nodded, looking genuinely ashamed. "You're right. I let my pride and prejudice cloud my judgment. I'm sorry." Captain Rodriguez turned to Karen, his expression stern. "Ms. Williams, you'll return to your duties. For now. But we'll be having a serious conversation when we reach Mars Colony." Karen nodded miserably and hurried away. Several passengers watched her go with disapproving looks. "Commander, Doctor," the captain continued, "please let me know if there's anything you need during the flight. The crew will take excellent care of you." "We just want a quiet trip," Diana said gently. "We're tired and we have work to do when we reach Mars." The captain nodded and returned to the cockpit. Gradually, the other passengers settled back into their seats, though many continued to glance at the siblings with respect and curiosity. Marcus returned to his tablet, but Diana noticed people pulling up news articles about their achievements. The Battle of Kepler Station, the Siege of New Angeles, the development of quantum shield technology. Their photos appeared on passenger screens throughout the cabin. "So much for traveling quietly," Diana murmured to her brother. Marcus shrugged. "At least no one will bother us about our seats anymore." A young flight attendant, different from Karen, approached their row. She looked nervous but determined. "Commander Johnson, Dr. Johnson," she said respectfully. "I wanted to thank you for your service to humanity. My cousin lives on New Angeles Colony. Your shield saved his life." Diana smiled warmly. "We were just doing our jobs. I'm glad your cousin is safe." The flight attendant beamed and continued with her duties. Around the cabin, the atmosphere had completely changed. What had started as an incident of prejudice and discrimination had become a moment of recognition for two genuine heroes. Peterson remained in his assigned seat, occasionally glancing toward the siblings with obvious regret. Other passengers were reading about their achievements, sharing information, and looking at Marcus and Diana with new respect. The Stellar Dawn finished loading and prepared for departure. As the ship pulled away from Luna Station, Marcus and Diana settled in for their journey to Mars Colony. They had handled the discrimination with dignity, revealed their true identities only when necessary, and turned a negative situation into a moment that would be remembered by everyone aboard. Outside their window, the stars waited, and somewhere, among them, alien threats continued to challenge humanity. But on this ship at this moment, humans had been reminded of who their real heroes were. 2 hours into the flight, Captain Rodriguez returned to the first-class cabin. This time he carried a small tablet and wore the expression of a man who had spent considerable time thinking about his next words. He stopped at Marcus and Diana's row and waited respectfully until they looked up. "Commander Johnson, Dr. Johnson," he began formally, "I need to speak with you both about what happened earlier. May I sit down?" Marcus gestured to the empty seat across the aisle. "Of course, Captain." Rodriguez sat down and took a deep breath. "I've spent the last 2 hours reviewing everything that happened today, and I owe you both a personal apology. What occurred on my ship was unacceptable." Diana closed her book and gave him her full attention. "We appreciate that, Captain." "No, you don't understand," Rodriguez continued, his voice heavy with regret. "I've been flying civilian routes for 15 years. I've seen discrimination before, and I've always told myself I would handle it better when it happened on my ship. Today I failed that test completely." He looked down at his hands. "When Ms. Williams first told me about the seating issue, I should have asked more questions. I should have investigated properly. Instead, I let her handle it because I was busy with pre-flight preparations." Marcus nodded slowly. "You trusted your crew to handle passenger services. That's reasonable. But it's not enough," Rodriguez replied firmly. "The moment I learned that passengers were being asked to move based on someone else's demands, I should have intervened immediately. Instead, I only got involved when you contacted Admiral Hayes. Around them, other passengers were pretending to read or sleep, but many were clearly listening to the conversation. The captain's voice carried just enough for nearby seats to hear. "Captain," Diana said gently, "we understand that these situations are complicated. You're trying to keep all your passengers happy." Rodriguez shook his head. "That's exactly the problem, Dr. Johnson. I was trying to keep the wrong passenger happy. Mr. Peterson had no right to demand your seats, and Ms. Williams had no authority to ask you to move." He pulled up files on his tablet. "I've been reading your service records. Commander Johnson, your actions at Kepler Station saved an entire colony. You held off 3 alien warships with a damaged frigate for 6 hours until reinforcements arrived." Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "I had good people with me. It wasn't just my doing." "And Dr. Johnson," the captain continued, "your quantum shield technology protects millions of people across 12 colonies. Children sleep safely at night because of your work. Diana smiled softly. Science is a team effort, Captain. I had brilliant colleagues helping me. Rodriguez looked at both of them with obvious admiration. You're both too modest, but that's not the point. The point is that you're heroes and you were treated with disrespect on my ship. That reflects badly on me and on the entire civilian space service. He stood up and called out in a voice that carried throughout the first class. Cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? Conversations stopped. Passengers turned to look at the captain. Even people in the economy section craned their necks to see what was happening. I want everyone to know about two of our passengers, Rodriguez announced. Commander Marcus Johnson of the Colonial Space Defense Force is the hero of Kepler Station. 3 years ago, he saved 30,000 colonists from alien attack. Murmurs of recognition spread through the cabin. Several passengers began clapping softly. Dr. Diana Johnson developed the quantum shield technology that currently protects our outer colonies. Her scientific work has saved hundreds of thousands of lives. The applause grew stronger. People throughout the ship were now standing to see the siblings better. Marcus and Diana looked embarrassed by the attention, but they nodded politely to acknowledge the recognition. Earlier today, the captain continued, his voice taking on a serious tone. These two heroes were asked to give up their paid first-class seats to accommodate another passenger. This was wrong. It was discrimination, and it happened on my ship. The applause stopped. The cabin fell silent as passengers realized they were hearing about the incident many had witnessed. I want everyone to know that this kind of behavior will not be tolerated on any ship I command. Every passenger deserves to be treated with respect, regardless of their race, background, or appearance. He turned back to Marcus and Diana. Commander Johnson, Dr. Johnson, I formally apologize on behalf of Stellar Dawn and the entire civilian space service. You deserved better treatment. Marcus stood up and extended his hand. Thank you, Captain. We accept your apology. Rodriguez shook his hand gratefully, then shook Diana's hand as well. There's more I need to tell you. I filed a formal complaint against Ms. Williams with the Passenger Service Board. She'll face disciplinary action for her conduct. Captain, Diana said carefully, we don't want to ruin anyone's career over this. Dr. Johnson, with respect, this isn't about ruining careers. It's about maintaining standards. If we don't take action when discrimination occurs, we're telling our employees that it's acceptable. Rodriguez pulled up another file on his tablet. Ms. Williams has been with the company for 8 years. This isn't her first complaint about discriminatory behavior toward passengers of color. She's been warned before. Marcus frowned. So this is a pattern? Unfortunately, yes. The company has been too lenient in the past. That changes now. The captain looked around the cabin at the listening passengers. I'm also implementing new training requirements for all crew members. Every employee will complete updated diversity and anti-discrimination courses before they can continue flying. From several rows back, Charles Peterson stood up. He walked slowly toward their group, his face showing genuine remorse. Captain Commander Dr. Johnson, he said quietly, I need to add my own apology. My behavior today was shameful. I used my wealth and position to try to take something that wasn't mine. He looked directly at Marcus and Diana. I let my prejudices control my actions. I assumed things about you based on your appearance that were completely wrong. I'm sorry. Marcus studied Peterson's face. The man's regret seemed genuine. We all have prejudices, Mr. Peterson. The important thing is recognizing them and working to overcome them. Peterson nodded. You're more generous than I deserve. I've learned something important today about making assumptions. A young woman from the economy section had walked up to listen to the conversation. She looked nervous but determined. Excuse me, she said softly. I wanted to thank you both for your service. My family lives on Titan Colony. We feel safer knowing there are people like you protecting us. Diana smiled warmly. That's why we do the work, to keep families safe. More passengers began approaching. An elderly man thanked Marcus for his military service. A middle-aged woman told Diana that her daughter wanted to become a scientist because of role models like her. Captain Rodriguez watched the interactions with satisfaction. This is how it should be, he said to himself. The flight attendant, who had thanked them earlier, approached the group. Captain, the crew in economy asked me to tell you that everyone back there is talking about Commander and Dr. Johnson. People are sharing their stories on social media. Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. Social media? The attendant nodded. The incident is already trending on Facebook and colonial Twitter. People are calling it an example of everyday heroism and dignity in the face of discrimination. Marcus and Diana exchanged glances. They had hoped to travel quietly, but their story was now spreading across human space. I suppose there are worse things to be famous for, Diana said with a small smile. The captain nodded. Your response to discrimination with grace and dignity is exactly the kind of example humanity needs, especially when we're facing threats from outside our species. As passengers returned to their seats, the atmosphere on the Stellar Dawn had completely transformed. What had begun as an incident of prejudice had become a lesson in human dignity, heroism, and the importance of treating everyone with respect. The ship continued its journey to Mars Colony, carrying not just passengers, but a story that would soon reach every corner of human space. The Stellar Dawn was approaching Mars Colony when Marcus's communicator chimed again. This time it was not a call, but a priority message from Colonial Defense Headquarters. He read it quickly, then showed it to Diana. Admiral Hayes wants to meet us at the station, he said quietly. Diana raised an eyebrow. In person? She must be taking this incident very seriously. Around them, passengers were gathering their belongings and preparing for arrival. The atmosphere remained respectful and friendly. Several people had approached them during the flight to express thanks for their service. Captain Rodriguez made an announcement over the ship's communication system. Ladies and gentlemen, we are beginning our approach to New Ares Station, Mars Colony. Local time is 1400 hours. Thank you for flying with us today. He paused, then added something unusual for a standard arrival announcement. I also want to remind everyone that we had the honor of carrying two genuine heroes today. Their example of dignity and service represents the best of humanity. Light applause spread through the cabin. Marcus and Diana nodded politely to acknowledge. As the ship docked, passengers began moving toward the exits. Many stopped to shake hands with the siblings or offer quiet words of thanks. Peterson approached them one more time. Commander Doctor, he said, I wanted you to know that I've been thinking about what happened today. When I get back to Earth, I'm going to talk to my company's board about reviewing our hiring and promotion practices. We need to make sure we're not letting prejudice affect our decisions. Marcus shook his hand. That's good to hear, Mr. Peterson. Real change starts with individual choices. Exactly, Peterson agreed. Thank you for showing me that. The siblings were among the last to leave the ship. Captain Rodriguez waited for them at the airlock. Commander, Doctor, it's been an honor having you aboard, he said formally. I hope your future travels are more pleasant. Thank you, Captain, Diana replied. Your apology and actions today showed real leadership. The Space Service needs more officers like you. Rodriguez smiled. I learned something important today about standing up for what's right, even when it's uncomfortable. As they walked through the station corridors, Marcus and Diana noticed people recognizing them. The social media posts from the flight had spread quickly. Passengers were pointing them out and whispering to their companions. Commander Johnson. Dr. Johnson, a voice called out behind them. They turned to see Admiral Patricia Hayes walking toward them, flanked by two junior officers. Hayes was a tall, imposing woman in her 50s with silver hair and the bearing of someone who had spent decades making life-and-death decisions. Admiral, Marcus said, coming to attention. Diana straightened as well. At ease, Hayes said warmly. Walk with me. We have a lot to discuss. They moved to a private conference room in the station's administrative section. The junior officers remained outside while Hayes closed the door behind them. First, Hayes began, I want to say how proud I am of how you both handled that situation. Dignity under pressure is exactly what we expect from our people. She activated a wall display showing news feeds from across human space. But I also need you to understand what your story has become. The screen showed headlines from dozens of worlds. Heroes face discrimination on civilian flight. War hero asked to give up seat. Scientists who saved colonies treated poorly. The story was spreading across every major news network. This is bigger than just one incident on one ship, Hayes continued. Your story has touched something in people. They're talking about discrimination, about heroism, about what it means to be human. Diana looked at the news feeds with concern. We didn't want this kind of attention, Admiral. I know you didn't, but sometimes the universe gives us exactly what we need, even when we don't want it. Hayes switched to another display. Look at these responses. The screen filled with messages from across human space. Colonial governors expressing outrage at the discrimination. Military units posting support for their fellow service members. Civilians sharing their own stories of prejudice and unfair treatment. People are angry, Hayes explained. Not just at what happened to you, but at the idea that we're still fighting these old battles when we should be united against external threats. Marcus studied the messages. What do you want us to do, Admiral? Hayes smiled. I want you to accept promotions you've both earned but haven't received yet. She pulled out 2 official documents. Commander Johnson, you're being promoted to Colonel and given command of the new Rapid Response Fleet. Dr. Johnson, you're being appointed as Chief Scientific Advisor for Colonial Defense. Both siblings looked surprised. These were significant positions with major responsibilities. These promotions were already approved before today's incident, Hayes continued. But I'm announcing them now, in response to what happened. I want everyone to see that heroism and dedication are rewarded, regardless of race or background. She activated another display showing fleet deployment charts. More importantly, I'm using this moment to announce a fleet-wide review of discrimination policies. Every ship, every station, every facility under Colonial Defense Authority will implement new anti-discrimination protocols. Diana leaned forward. What kind of protocols? Zero tolerance for discriminatory behavior. Mandatory training for all personnel. Regular reviews of promotion and assignment decisions to identify bias. And civilian transport companies that want military contracts will have to meet the same standards. Hayes pulled up another document. I'm also creating the Johnson protocols named after both of you. These will be the new standard for equal treatment in all human space operations. Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. You're using our names? Your story matters, Colonel Johnson. People need heroes they can relate to. They need to see that courage and intelligence come in all colors from all backgrounds. The Admiral stood and walked to the window overlooking the bustling Mars colony spaceport. We're facing threats from alien species that want to destroy or enslave humanity. We can't afford to waste talent because of old prejudices. We can't afford to divide ourselves when we need to stand together. She turned back to them. Your incident today reminded everyone of something important. The enemies trying to destroy us don't care about our skin color or our backgrounds. They just see humans. We need to start seeing ourselves the same way. Diana nodded slowly. So this becomes bigger than just 2 people on a spaceship. Exactly. This becomes about who we are as a species, about whether we can overcome our internal divisions to face external threats. Hayes handed them their promotion documents. I need you both to accept these positions, not just for your careers, but for what your leadership will represent. Marcus looked at his sister. They had joined the military and scientific services to protect humanity. Now they were being asked to help humanity grow beyond its own limitations. We accept, Diana said firmly. But we do this our way, with dignity, competence, and respect for everyone we work with. I wouldn't expect anything less, Hayes replied with a smile. The Admiral activated her communicator. Attention all Colonial Defense facilities. This is Admiral Hayes with an important announcement. I'm pleased to inform you of 2 new appointments. Her voice was being broadcast across the entire human defense network. Thousands of personnel on hundreds of worlds were listening. Colonel Marcus Johnson has been appointed to command our new Rapid Response Fleet. Dr. Diana Johnson has been named Chief Scientific Advisor for Colonial Defense. Both officers exemplify the courage, intelligence, and integrity that define our service. She paused for effect. These appointments are effective immediately and represent our commitment to promoting the best qualified personnel. Regardless of background, the Johnson protocols for equal treatment will be implemented fleet-wide within 30 days. The announcement ended. Outside the conference room, they could hear excited discussions among station personnel. "Now," Hayes said with satisfaction, "let's see how humanity responds to real leadership." 3 weeks after the incident on the Stellar Dawn, the consequences were spreading across human space like ripples from a stone dropped in still water. Karen Williams sat in a small apartment on Luna Station, staring at another rejection letter on her tablet. The message was polite but clear. No civilian space transport company would hire her. She had been fired from Stellar Dawn Airlines the day after the flight landed on Mars. The company's investigation found that she had violated multiple passenger service policies and anti-discrimination guidelines. Her supervisor noted that this was her third complaint in 5 years for similar behavior. Now Karen faced the reality that her actions on one flight had ended her career in space transport. Every company she applied to ran background checks that showed her termination for discrimination. In an industry where trust and professionalism were essential, she had become unemployable. Meanwhile, Charles Peterson was dealing with his own consequences. The video of his confrontation with Marcus and Diana had been shared millions of times across social media. His company's stock price had dropped 15% as investors worried about bad publicity and potential boycotts. Peterson sat in his office on Mars Colony, reading reports from his public relations team. The damage to his company's reputation was significant. Mining contracts with several colonies were being reconsidered. His board of directors had called an emergency meeting to discuss his behavior. "Mr. Peterson," his assistant said through the intercom, "the board is ready for you in conference room A." Peterson straightened his tie and walked down the hall. 12 board members sat around a polished table, their faces showing various degrees of concern and disappointment. "Charles," the board chairwoman began, "we need to discuss the incident on the Stellar Dawn and its impact on our company." Peterson nodded. "I understand. I've already prepared a statement taking full responsibility for my actions." "That's a start," another board member said, "but we're looking at serious financial consequences. 3 colonies have canceled mining contracts worth over 200 million credits." The chairwoman pulled up a display showing social media analytics. The hashtag Peterson Prejudice has been used over 5 million times. Our company name is associated with discrimination and entitlement. Peterson felt the weight of his mistakes. "What do you want me to do?" "We want you to step down as CEO," the chairwoman said firmly. "The company needs new leadership to recover from this crisis." Within hours, news of Peterson's resignation spread across the business networks. The man who had demanded better seats, because of his wealth and status, was now paying the price for his prejudice. At the same time, Stellar Dawn Airlines was facing its own reckoning. Captain Rodriguez had been promoted to fleet captain in recognition of his handling of the incident, but the company itself was struggling with public backlash. Bookings had dropped 30% as passengers chose other airlines. Social media campaigns called for boycotts until the company implemented stronger anti-discrimination policies. The airline's stock price fell to a 5-year low. The company's CEO, Margaret Foster, called an emergency meeting with her senior staff. "We need to make significant changes," she announced. "This incident has shown serious flaws in our training and policies." She outlined a comprehensive reform plan. All employees would complete new diversity training within 60 days. The company would hire a diversity and inclusion officer. Customer service policies would be rewritten to prevent discrimination. Most importantly, the company would establish a fund to support civil rights organizations across human space. "This is going to cost us millions of credits," the chief financial officer pointed out. "It's going to cost us a lot more if we don't change," Foster replied. "Our reputation is damaged. The only way to rebuild trust is through real action." The changes at Stellar Dawn were just the beginning. Admiral Hayes's announcement of the Johnson protocols had triggered reviews at transportation companies, military contractors, and civilian businesses across human space. Companies that wanted to work with colonial defense had to prove they followed anti-discrimination practices. On Earth, the Global Transportation Authority announced new regulations requiring all space transport companies to implement bias training and equal treatment policies. The European Space Consortium, the African Colonial Union, and the Asian Space Federation all passed similar requirements. Dr. Diana Johnson, now settled into her new role as Chief Scientific Advisor, received daily reports about the changes spreading across human civilization. Her assistant brought her the latest summary while she worked in her new office at Colonial Defense Headquarters. Dr. Johnson, the assistant said, the media team wants to know if you'll comment on the Peterson Industries situation. Diana looked up from her research files. What's the latest? Charles Peterson has resigned as CEO. The company is restructuring its leadership and implementing new hiring practices. They're also donating 50 million credits to educational programs in underserved colonies. Diana considered this information. Peterson's fall from power was dramatic, but she took no pleasure in his downfall. I think Mr. Peterson learned an important lesson. I hope his company's changes are genuine and lasting. Colonel Marcus Johnson was dealing with similar media attention as he organized his new rapid response fleet. His headquarters on Titan Station buzzed with activity as ships and personnel arrived from across human space. His aide, Lieutenant Commander Sarah Martinez, briefed him on the latest developments. Sir, we're getting reports from 17 different star systems about transportation companies implementing new anti-discrimination policies. The Johnson protocols are being adopted faster than anyone expected. Marcus nodded as he reviewed fleet deployment charts. That's good to hear. But our real job is defending humanity from external threats. These internal changes only matter if they make us stronger as a species. Martinez handed him another report. Speaking of external threats, sir, intelligence suggests increased alien activity in the Vega system. The colonies there might need our support soon. Then we'd better make sure our new fleet is ready, Marcus replied. And we'd better make sure every person in that fleet knows they're fighting for all of humanity, not just people who look like them. The ripple effects continued to spread. On dozens of worlds, people shared stories about their own experiences with discrimination. Support groups formed for victims of prejudice. Educational programs taught children about equality and respect. The incident on one spaceship had become a catalyst for examining humanity's deepest flaws. People who had never spoken about discrimination began sharing their experiences. Companies reviewed their practices. Governments updated their laws, but not everyone was happy with the changes. On some worlds, people complained that the response was too extreme. They argued that one incident shouldn't trigger such massive reforms. Online forums filled with debates about race, fairness, and social change. However, the momentum for change was too strong to stop. The image of two dignified heroes being asked to give up their seats had struck a nerve across human civilization. People were no longer willing to accept discrimination as normal or acceptable. Admiral Hayes monitored the developments from her office at Colonial Defense Headquarters. Her aide brought her the daily intelligence briefing, which now included social and political analysis alongside military threats. Admiral, the aide reported, civilian authorities on 15 worlds have requested assistance implementing the Johnson protocols. They want military advisors to help train their personnel. Hayes smiled. Grant those requests. But make sure our people understand they're there to help, not to impose military solutions on civilian problems. She looked out her window at the ships moving through Earth's orbital traffic. How are Colonel Johnson and Dr. Johnson handling their new roles? Very well, ma'am. Colonel Johnson's fleet is ahead of schedule for operational readiness. Dr. Johnson's research team has made breakthrough progress on improved shield technology. Good. They're proving that promoting people based on merit rather than prejudice makes us stronger. Hayes paused. Any word on Karen Williams? The aide checked her files. Still unemployed, ma'am. No transport company will hire her. She's applied for basic service positions on cargo ships, but even they won't take her. Hayes nodded thoughtfully. Discrimination has consequences. Sometimes those consequences are severe. But that's how change happens. When people see that, Bad behavior leads to real costs. As the weeks passed, the transformation continued. The incident that had begun with two siblings refusing to give up their airplane seats had become a turning point for human civilization. People were learning that unity wasn't just a nice idea. It was essential for survival in a dangerous universe. 1 year later, Colonel Marcus Johnson stood on the bridge of the battleship Unity, watching as his rapid response fleet moved into formation around the besieged colony of New Haven. The alien attack fleet had arrived 3 days ago with overwhelming force, but this time, humanity was ready. "Colonel," his communications officer reported, "all ships are in position. The fleet represents crews from 47 different worlds and includes personnel from every major ethnic group in human space." Marcus nodded with satisfaction. His fleet was not just diverse in appearance, but in thinking, strategy, and approach. The Johnson protocols had ensured that the best people were promoted regardless of their backgrounds, and the results showed in their tactical flexibility and innovation. "Dr. Johnson's new shield modifications are online across all vessels," the tactical officer added. "Shield efficiency is up 30% from last year's specifications." Through the view screen, Marcus could see the alien ships surrounding New Haven Colony. They were large, predatory vessels that had destroyed 2 other colonies in the past month. But this time would be different. "Signal the fleet," Marcus commanded. "Begin Operation Unity." The human ships moved with precision that surprised the alien commanders, instead of the predictable tactics they had encountered before. This fleet used coordinated strategies developed by officers from dozens of different worlds, each bringing their own cultural perspectives to military thinking. On the surface of New Haven, Dr. Diana Johnson worked frantically in the colony's research station. Her team of scientists, also selected purely on merit rather than connections or background, had developed new defensive technologies that were about to be tested in real combat. "Diana," her assistant called out, "the quantum resonance chambers are ready. We can extend the planetary shields for another 6 hours if needed." Diana looked at her diverse team of researchers. They included the best minds from across human, space, people who might never have been given opportunities under the old systems of prejudice and favoritism. "Excellent work, everyone. Let's show these aliens what united human intelligence can accomplish." Above them, the space battle began. Marcus's fleet engaged the alien ships with tactics that confused and frustrated the enemy. Ships commanded by officers from African colonies used strategies learned from ancient Earth warfare. Captains from Asian settlements employed patience and timing that wore down alien aggression. European commanders brought systematic precision that maximized their technological advantages. The aliens had expected humanity to fight the same way they always had, predictably and with internal conflicts that could be exploited. Instead, they faced a united force that combined the best tactical thinking from across human civilization. "Their formation is breaking," the tactical officer reported. "The enemy fleet is retreating." Marcus allowed himself a small smile. "Signal New Haven Colony, they're safe." The victory at New Haven was just one example of how the changes sparked by a simple incident on a civilian spaceship had transformed human society. The Johnson protocols had become more than anti-discrimination policies. They had become a new way of organizing human civilization based on merit, respect, and unity. Admiral Hayes reviewed the battle reports from her office on Earth. The rapid response fleet's success was remarkable, but it was just part of a larger transformation she had been watching for months. Her aide brought her the latest social impact analysis. "Admiral, educational achievement in underserved colonies is up 40% since the Johnson protocols were implemented. Applications to military and scientific academies from minority populations have tripled." Hayes nodded. "When people believe they have real opportunities, they work harder to achieve them. We're not just fighting discrimination. We're unlocking human potential that was being wasted." She pulled up reports from across human space. On dozens of worlds, people who had been held back by prejudice were now contributing their talents to society. Scientists, engineers, military officers, teachers, doctors, all working at their full potential because the barriers had been removed. "What About the economic impact? Hayes asked. Significant and positive, ma'am. Companies that implemented strong diversity policies are outperforming their competitors by an average of 23%. They're more innovative, more efficient, and more profitable. The changes went beyond numbers and statistics. On the transport ship New Horizon, Captain Jennifer Brooks conducted her daily briefing with a crew that reflected the full diversity of human space. Her first officer was from the African colonies, her chief engineer came from the Asian settlements, and her medical officer had grown up on Mars. Today marks the first anniversary of the Stellar Dawn incident, Captain Brooks announced to her crew. I want everyone to remember what we learned from Colonel and Dr. Johnson. Dignity, courage, and unity make us stronger. The crew nodded respectfully. They had all heard the story many times, but it never lost its power to inspire. In schools, across human space, children learned about the incident as part of their standard curriculum. On Luna Colony, teacher Robert Chang explained the lesson to his diverse classroom of 8-year-olds. Why do you think the story of Colonel and Dr. Johnson is important? He asked. A young girl from the Europa settlements raised her hand. Because they showed that heroes come in all colors? That's right, Maria, what else? A boy from the Martian colonies spoke up. Because they didn't get angry when people treated them badly. They stayed calm and did the right thing. Excellent, David. They chose dignity over anger, and it changed everything. The teacher pulled up images of the diverse crew members working on various space stations and colonies. Today, all of you can dream of becoming anything you want, scientists, explorers, leaders, because we judge people by their abilities, not their appearance. Meanwhile, Karen Williams worked as a maintenance technician on a small cargo station near Jupiter. It was honest work, but far from the career she had once had. She often thought about that day on the Stellar Dawn and the choices that had led to her current situation. Her supervisor, an older man from the African colonies, had been patient with her as she learned to do her job properly and treat all her co-workers with respect. Slowly, Karen was learning lessons she should have understood years earlier. Williams, her supervisor called out, good work on the air recycling system repairs, you're really improving. Karen nodded gratefully. She had lost her old career, but she was slowly building something better, a life based on treating others with dignity and respect. Charles Peterson had also rebuilt his life, though very differently. After resigning from his company, he had donated most of his wealth to educational programs in underserved colonies. He now worked as a volunteer teacher on remote settlements, helping children who looked nothing like him achieve their dreams. Mr. Peterson, one of his students asked, why did you leave your big company to come teach us? Peterson smiled at the young girl from the Alpha Centauri colonies. Because I learned that helping others succeed is more important than just making money for yourself. I learned that everyone deserves a chance to reach their potential. As the anniversary of the Stellar Dawn incident approached, Admiral Hayes prepared a fleet-wide announcement. She had watched humanity transform itself in response to a simple act of discrimination, and the results exceeded her highest expectations. Personnel of the Colonial Defense Force, she began, her voice reaching every human military installation across the galaxy. 1 year ago, 2 of our finest officers faced discrimination on a civilian transport. Their dignified response sparked changes that have made us stronger as a species. She paused, looking at reports showing increased cooperation between colonies, improved military effectiveness, and unprecedented scientific advances. The Johnson protocols have done more than prevent discrimination. They have unleashed human potential that was being wasted by prejudice and bias. We are now truly united in our diversity, and our enemies have learned to fear that unity. Hayes concluded her announcement with words that would be remembered for generations. When we face external threats, we stand together as one human species. When we face internal challenges, we support each other with dignity and respect. This is our legacy. This is our strength. This is humanity at its best. Across human space, people heard the message and reflected on how far they had come. A simple incident on one spaceship had reminded them of their highest values and their greatest potential. They had chosen unity over division, merit over prejudice, and hope over fear. And in a dangerous galaxy filled with threats, humanity stood stronger than ever before.